All right, here we go. It's a brand new Flyers Daily for March 14th, Thursday, which is presented as always by Ticketmaster. Make more memories live. Flyers General Manager Daniel Briere in just a moment to kind of go over the deadline, state of the team, and much more. But first and foremost, Flyers back at it tonight, and the gauntlet begins. 7 games against 5 different teams with a combined record of 287-37, 437 standings points. And tonight it is the Toronto Maple Leafs. Next 2 home games actually against Toronto. You've got tonight at Wells Fargo Center, and then the Flyers going to travel to Boston to take on the Bruins on Saturday. And then Tuesday of next week, it's Toronto at Wells Fargo Center again. Carolina or on the road, rather, on Thursday the 21st. Then Saturday, it will be the Boston Bruins at 1 o'clock. And then Sunday, the Florida Panthers at 6 o'clock, back-to-back home games on the weekend. And then the Flyers wrap up the gauntlet with the New York Rangers coming up on the 26th of March. That's why those 2 points against the San Jose Sharks were so important with these teams on tap. And tonight it's the Flyers and the Leafs. And you look back at the Leafs and you look at their season so far. They beat the Flyers in overtime back on February 15th. Score in that game was 4-3. If you count the game just before that they played against the St. Louis Blues, which was a 4-1 win, and you look at their results, they've played 14 games. They have a record of 11-3 over that stretch. They've scored 55 goals, which is 3.92 goals per game. That's pretty good. They've given up a total of 39 goals in those 14 games, which is an average of 2.78 goals per game. And they've been getting it done. Some of the teams they beat weren't top teams in the NHL. For example, like the Arizona Coyotes, or they beat the Coyotes twice, actually, in that stretch. They beat the Buffalo Sabres. They beat the Montreal Canadiens. But they did have wins over the Colorado Avalanche, the Vegas Golden Knights, also a loss against Vegas. They beat the Rangers in a shootout, and they did lose 2 times to the Boston Bruins over that stretch. They also beat Buffalo in overtime. So it's the Flyers against Toronto, and when you play Toronto, obviously, you've got to be cognizant of Austin Matthews. For my money, not only the best shooter of the puck in the league right now, he is the best maybe shooter ever in the history of the NHL. Now, he's not the greatest goal scorer of all time. I say greatest shooter because of the way he can shoot the puck with today's technology. 63 games played. He's got 54 goals, an absurd amount. 80 points on the season, 26 assists. He's got 15 power play goals. And when you play this Toronto team, Flyers cannot. They took too many penalties the other night against San Jose, 6, and got scored on the power play twice. Both of San Jose's goals from Filip Zadina came on the power play. You do not want to put this team on the power play. Toronto is vicious on the power play. Second ranked, 27.2%. So we're going to see this team twice, back-to-back times at Wells Fargo with a game in between. And they've got to be incredibly disciplined against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And one of the things about Austin Matthews, I could talk to Sam Emerson about this, is he's such a lethal shooter, and he does such a good job of changing everything. Not just his release point, not just the disguising the release. He changes everything and gets so much on it with such accuracy that sometimes, even before he shoots the puck, the goaltender doesn't have much of a chance because you just don't know where the release is going to come from, if he's going to pull it into his feet, if he's going to pull it halfway and release, if he's going to keep it away from his body or move it away from his body. He's going to close his shoulders, open the hips. All those things are all done to disguise when and where he's going to release it to. And he ties goaltenders' heads in knots. He gets so much on it. He is a big boy, and he can shoot it hard and with great accuracy. And the way that he's able to use the flex of the stick and move that release around, put the puck at different spots on the blade of his stick. That's another thing a goaltender reads. So it's just an absolute elite shooter. And Sam Emerson's got to just hang in there and get the best read he can and battle against Austin Matthews in these 2 games that are coming up. It is a gauntlet. It is a tough run of games, but this is what is in order for the Philadelphia Flyers right now, who are sitting in that third spot in the Metropolitan Division with 76 points, 4 points up on the New York Islanders, who are fourth in the division. Islanders have 2 games in hand, and Flyers 2 points up on Tampa, who's in wild card number 1. Detroit right now, losers of 6 straight, are on the outside looking in as the kind of 9th seed in the Eastern Conference. So really it's going to come down to probably 3 teams, maybe if Detroit can hang in this thing for just those 2 playoff spots. So we'll see how it plays out, or 4 teams, if you will, for 3 playoff spots. Toronto sitting in the 3rd spot in the Atlantic through 64 games, 37, 19, and 8, 82 points on the season. And like I said, 7-3 in their last 10, did win their last one. They're plus 30 in goal differential. They've been pretty good on the road, 19, 7, and 6. Flyers at home this season, 17, 13, and 3. So Flyers, Leafs at Wells Fargo Center tonight. All right, deadline is in the rearview mirror. It closed 6 days ago, last Friday at 3 p.m. Daniel Briere was very active at the deadline, leading up to the deadline. I thought he handled the deadline with a lot of calm and a lot of poise. And again, Daniel Briere not afraid to make a complicated deal, going all the way back to the summer and the Provorov trade. And he was able to procure a first-round pick when there was a lot. First-round picks were not getting thrown around the league a whole heck of a lot. When you saw some of the deals, Gensel didn't garner a first-rounder. You look at Tanev didn't garner a first-rounder. And Danny Briere was able to weaponize some cap space and get a first-round pick. 2 first-round picks in last year's draft with Michkov and Bonk. 2 first-round picks, theirs and Florida's, in this coming draft. And then 2 picks in next year's draft with their pick and the Colorado Avalanche's first-round pick. 2, 2, 2, 3 years in a row. That's how you do a rebuild and restock the cupboard. So let's get to the conversation. I always had a chance to talk with Danny on Monday, and here's my conversation with the Flyers general manager. It is a special edition of Flyers Daily presented by Ticketmaster, and we're joined by Flyers general manager Daniel Briere. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks.
It doesn't look like the trade deadline aged you in any way. You looked relaxed through the whole thing.
Now I'm more relaxed, that's for sure. But it was pretty intense that whole week. Getting ready for it. A lot of time spent on the phone mostly, but it was exciting at the same time. And you get to know a little bit more too about, the value that other teams are putting on your team, on some of the players. Obviously, we're not discussing all the players, but sometimes there's names that come out. Some teams are interested in certain players that, there's more value there than we realize, and vice versa. So, it was a lot of good information overall, and happy with the way things ended up for us.
Was it kind of what you expected? You're going into your first one, you have an expectation. You've kind of seen it from the outside a little bit, not really the outside, but not as the GM. Did it kind of meet your expectations?
It's pretty much what I expected. I was ready and prepared for it. Kind of went that way, but you don't know until you're in there. And you always have to be ready to pivot and adjust along the way. In Sean Walker's case, that's kind of exactly what happened. We were talking with, I think I had 6 other teams, and then all of a sudden, boom, Colorado called, and they were ready to move and make it happen, and that was done really quickly with Chris.
See, that's interesting because sometimes a team will lay in the weeds and wait, and they kind of see what the value is, and they're talking to people, and then they jump in, and then don't give other teams another opportunity. That deal, you end up getting a first-round pick. You've not been averse to taking on a complicated deal. And this one had, a player coming back and Ryan Johansson, who you waived, and were responsible for half of his salary. But going back to the summer too, you're not afraid of the complicated deal. You're not going just chalk.
No, and that's kind of the that's the area that we maybe can take advantage of at the time and a timeline where we're at with the organization, the cap space that we had available. So, and I made that clear with the teams that we can help them in, other ways, not just with acquiring players, but either with creating more cap space or for them to get rid of a contract that they're not comfortable with.
Third-party broker is one of those things, even with the cap eventually going up this year, it still has a lot of power. Cap space still is, to me, for a while there, it was, the most sought after player in the league. cap space.
Yeah, that's right. And when we let teams know as well that we were open, we had a couple more that were just waiting in the weeds that did not happen. But we were very involved in all of that, and trying to find ways to acquire either players or draft capital for the future.
You end up with a 2025 first. How important was it that it be 2025 and not 2024, where you already have two first round selections?
That was the key. That was very important for us going into this draft in 24. After the season, we have Florida's first round pick as well, and we have possibly Columbus's second round pick, which at the moment looks to be in the mid 30s, and then we have a lottery pick at 51. So looking at it, if ours is around 15 to 20, that means we're going to have the chance to pick 4 players between, let's say, 15 and 51. We felt better about moving it to the
it's a little
following
heavy.
year. Exactly. And, keep our options open, and we'll see in that pick, maybe we use it to pick, or maybe we look at different options too. It's always nice. We also have, Anaheim's and ours second the following year. So it gives us a lot of power going into both drafts. So that's why, for me, it was important that it was the first in 2025.
You have 2 first last year. You take Michkov and Bonk. You have 2 this year, 2 next year. It's kind of the definition of a rebuild, isn't it?
Yes, and that was the goal all along.
Yeah.
We wanted to find a way to get another first in 25 to give us, 6 first round picks in that first 3-year span that we were drafting. I think it should create a really solid base of blue chip prospect for us. That was the goal, and then Columbus's second round pick and maybe even Anaheim second round pick next year. Those are also possibilities of players that can be very important moving forward. So that I see it as almost 8 picks that could be part of that core group. Yeah, exactly. Impact players down the road. Now we have to be realistic. Those players are not going to be here playing for us in a year or two. We're looking at 4 or 5 years, 6 years down the road before they're impact players. So that's why it's we're trying to be careful, and we don't know exactly when we talk about a rebuild, we don't know exactly how many years it's going to take. It depends on how fast those players develop, but the exciting part is what the emergence of some of our players this year here that have played and took a big step much quicker than we expected. So that's really exciting.
You've talked about that, the importance that a culture of winning can mean in a rebuild. You're a team positioned in the playoffs right now, and you're going through this process. I think that culture, like, you can't just flip a switch for a young player that comes in the league. If he's in an organization that accepts losing, that's not a switch that you just turn on and off like a light switch.
That's what we feel. We feel it's important to have give them the chance to develop, on a good team surrounded by good veterans. And I get sometimes the team might not be as successful on the ice, but at least have some good veteran around them. Adding a guy like Mark Stahl on defense was critical. I think it helped even our older guys like Sanheim. The emergence of Cam York and Zamula on defense was tremendous, and I give him a lot of credit, but I give Mark Stahl a lot of credit too
for embracing that role.
Exactly. And he bought in, and look now, I mean, he's been playing lately a lot of games, a lot of heavy minutes. The same thing up front. Deloria has been great. Hathaway has been great as well, bringing and making sure that those guys feel comfortable going out there, not being worried that the other team's going to take advantage of them. Bringing a guy like Couturier and Atkinson, from the year before where we really missed him in the lineup to help, support Lawton and Konechny and company as far as leadership. And going into trade deadline, Eric Johnson or more of a veteran presence to reward our players for the way they had played and give them and show them that we believe in them making the playoffs this year. I think it's great for the growth of the team and some of our young players. So definitely we believe that for the development of our players, it's important to put them in, not just a winning situation, but just being surrounded by good veterans.
Yeah, and accountability from the jump in this league. The ultimate accountability is wins and losses
Correct.
in the sport.
And Torts takes good care of accountability too.
He tends to wear that. Let's talk about Nick Seeler, because you extend him.
Mm-hmm.
And what we were just talking about, Nick Seeler kind of fits that bill. To me, such a fascinating story. Thought about kind of checking his career at the door 3 years ago. And here he is now with a 4-year extension.
Yeah.
And it's not just about what he brings on the ice and leading the league in block shots and the intensity he plays with. To me, he's just a good citizen for the Delaware Valley. I think that's a good guy in so many facets. What went into the extension?
He, well, first of all, I have to say he's earned it. He didn't steal that deal. He really earned it. He went to work and really bought into, he's a culture guy in what we were doing. And he's another player that really helped this year. Took a big step in his game, in the sacrifices. He puts his body on the line every single game. It's been really impressive, and he earned that extension. That's why. And the other thing too that people have to know with him is he wanted to be on the Flyers.
Yeah.
He had no interest in being a rental. He flat out told us he wanted to be extended. He wanted to be here. He had no interest in going elsewhere to try to take a shortcut to a Stanley Cup. He wants to do it here with the Flyers. And he showed it when we started negotiating with him. He was adamant that he wanted to find a way to make it work. That was something that was working for both sides. It wasn't just about himself. He's a total team player through and through. And that's why we're excited to keep him aboard.
I think the one thing that doesn't get measured with him, we see him block shots and we see the sacrifice, but what we don't see is the reaction of a bench and what it does to a bench when he does the things he does.
Yeah.
That picks up an entire bench. Like
it does.
That's not measurable.
It does. And there's a lot of teams that, had interest in his services.
Oh, I'm sure.
To make a playoff run, but, and the thing that I was telling other teams too is, you see what he does on the ice and you see the sacrifices, but there's a certain value to that. But for us, there's another part of that value that he brings to our team that nobody knows or sees other than his teammates and the coaches and the people that are really close to the dressing room, how he is in the locker room, how he acts with his teammates, and how important he is to the locker room. So that's a big piece that we had to consider as well. And it's not just what you see on the outside and the block shots and the stat line for the other team. He's a critical leader for our dressing room.
Yeah, I always say there's two values. There's market value, and then there's what he means for you.
Exactly.
And he means a ton in this city. You've played 14 different D-men this year. You realize that? Could you name all 14?
And I'd have to think about it a little bit, but now
I'll see if I can give them to you. Sanheim, York. I'm already throwing a blank. Stahl, Zamula, Emil Andre, Victor Mete played a game. You have Seeler, Walker. That's 8. Belpedio played. Ginning, Adder.
Did we mention
Eric Johnson?
Did we mention Drysdale?
Jamie Drysdale and Ristolainen.
There's
14. Could you ever imagine that you played 14 different D this year?
No, I didn't imagine that. And it's funny. We started the year. We had to bring a couple guys like Louis Belpedio and Victor Mete to start early in the season. They did really well. And then we went through a stretch where we almost had no injury. We lost Risto, but most of the guys were hurt. And then all of a sudden, in the last 2 weeks, we've lost, Jamie and Seeler, and then now Zamula went out for a few. So all of a sudden, we just got hit over and over again. That's why, Eric Johnson was added, and then Ronnie Adder and Ginning have been called up. So I give him a lot of credit. In that game in Florida, especially, the play of Ronnie Adder and Adam Ginning was amazing against the top team in the NHL.
What's your philosophy? I mean, at some point, you're going to be a team that adds at the deadline. And I've always been kind of skeptical about the deadline in the sense that these teams that are in great position, all of a sudden, they want to make a pretty significant change by adding a dynamic talent on a rental into their room. And, other than maybe like Butch Goring, have I really seen it pay dividends? Sometimes it can upset the apple cart.
That's the dangerous part.
Yeah.
I remember a couple years ago, Colorado added Lehkonen,
Mm-hmm.
and he came in and he was tremendous for them. You just never know, and it's a fine line. You have to know your team really well. We're not there yet, and we're years away from that. But it's definitely something that I constantly think about. What would be a good
played,
add?
You know what that dynamic is like.
So, and I remember as a player, there's a part of you that you get excited when you bring a big piece in.
Yeah.
It motivates you and it shows you that management believe in your team and they want to help. But there's other cases where they bring in a player that you feel you don't really need, and it takes ice time away. And it can
takes a job
rifts.
away. Yeah.
It can create rifts in the locker room, and that's the fine line. At the moment, I would tell you, I wouldn't be worried about it because of the quality of the dressing room that we have.
Yeah.
I think it would be well received, but it's definitely something that we're always going to be trying to figure out what's the best way to do it, and then that's the tough part. But we're not there yet, and we'll keep
cross that bridge when you get to
we get there. But in the meantime, we're analyzing.
And you have to be mindful that I always thought it would be more advantageous to jump the market and go early, because adding that player in too with only a month to play to prepare for the playoffs seems awfully late to me.
It is at times, and I was thinking the same way when teams were calling on Sean Walker and Nick Seeler, and a few other guys, but teams, there's a pressure point too.
Yeah.
And
that drives
early in, the offers were not as good. So it's, you got to try to figure that out. Some teams jumped early because you don't know. There's always risk of injuries. There's all kinds of risk on both sides of the table. But I agree with you. If I was buying, sometimes I would like to give them more time. I remember Paul Holmgren had done that a few times early.
January buyer.
Exactly. Would pull off a big trade to give the player the chance to acclimate, and even the team to receive that player and figure out how we can implement him into our system, and sometimes the power play in the position that they would play in.
When you look at what kind of took place over the league, you're battling for a playoff spot. You're in that third spot as we speak. The Islanders seem like the real threat.
They're pushing,
here. Yeah, and they played well. But when you look at this situation, for you as the GM, does it give you the same kind of vibes as a player? The excitement of this time of year, trying to track down a ticket to the dance?
It does. It does. Certainly, in the situation that we're in. I mean, going into the season, we hoped we would be in a position to play some meaningful games at this time of the year, where our players could grow, develop, and acquire experience of what it's like to play some kind of playoff type hockey. Now that we're inside that bubble is even more exciting. Because it's
not the Toronto bubble.
It's two different things, right? When you're chasing teams to try to get in, and when you're in trying to preserve your spot. So I'm ecstatic about that. I think it's fantastic for the experience of especially our young players that have never really had the chance to experience it.
You look at this experience and what it's doing. It's putting the Flyers back on the front page in the NHL circles, and nobody's ambivalent about this team here in Philadelphia or around the globe. There's the Flyer fans around the world, and there's people that hate the Flyers. Nobody's like, I don't really have an opinion.
We don't leave people
no gray area.
No, exactly.
But it seems like this location, the Flyers are becoming a very desired location again for potential free agents and those kind of things. Do you feel like with you and Jonesy and Dan Hilferty, the job you guys have done, you've really...
Well, it's something we wanted to change.
Put your name out there again.
I'm not sure that we're there yet, but I think we've taken a step in the right direction. Eric Johnson was excited to join our team when I
Yeah.
talked to him after the trade. Same thing.
You played with him too.
I played with him in Colorado. Same thing with Dennis Gurianov. He was excited to join our team. I think it's slowly changing. It's going in the right direction, but we also know that there's lots of work to be done still to become one of the top place. I know when I was a free agent and I signed with the Flyers, the Flyers won in the top 2 or 3 places,
Yeah.
that free agents were looking at back then. So hopefully we can bring it back to that point.
What do free agents look for? What did you look for? It's, of course, money. Let's not, you got to be able to get paid.
Yeah.
But what are the other intangibles?
I think the next important one for me and for a lot of players is having a chance to win.
Yeah.
So, and that's where we were lacking, way behind the last few years.
Yeah.
This year, taking a step in the right direction probably will help. The way the players are being treated. Usually the Flyers are known as one of the top places to play. It started with Mr. Snyder way back then being known as one of the best owner in hockey, and now with Comcast back to core and Dan Hilferty, I think we've taken a big step forward in showing everybody that we're serious. So having them behind us is a huge asset, and they've been wonderful to deal with as well. The fact that travel is a big one.
Huge one.
We have a big advantage.
Yeah.
And the city of Philadelphia, the passion of the fans. For me, it was an important one. I know some players prefer to go to a quiet market, and we can't. And we can't do anything about that. But the players that want to be in a hockey market where fans care about what they do, this is one of the best places. So I think we have that pretty locked in Philadelphia.
The one thing, there was an article I had read that the NHL agents had this as one of the top locations for the little things, like when a player plays his first game, doesn't have to buy the jersey. Like they're taken care of.
That's how you treat your players.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and that goes a long way.
Yeah.
And players talk, they speak to each other,
Yeah.
and they know. And I really feel that the training facility is a big one for the players.
The new locker room,
things like that. So I think we are going in the right direction.
And new locker rooms like the Taj Mahal. Danny, thanks for doing this. Best of luck
thanks,
coming
Jason.
down the stretch.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Special thanks to Danny Briere for taking the time to go over the deadline and many other areas of the Flyers and the state of the Flyers as they look to push for a playoff spot. And he talked about it, how important that is to be in a winning culture while you're rebuilding, teaching that element that winning matters, and accountability and doing the right things and being a pro, how much it matters for when you're a team that can be pushing for the cup. They're pushing for a playoff spot, but they are also doing it amidst a rebuild. Not an impossible thing to do. So thanks to Danny Briere for joining us, and thanks to you for listening or watching. We will be back tomorrow. We will recap what is game 1 of the gauntlet, Flyers Leafs. We'll do that tomorrow on a brand new Flyers Daily.